Rain had been talking to the windows all afternoon, a steady murmur against the glass that Marina had stopped hearing years ago. It was simply part of the house now, like the creak in the hallway or the old clock that clicked a little louder when the evening settled in. The world outside her small cottage blurred into gray and silver, and inside everything was still and ordered, the way it usually was at 46 after a divorce. After the years had already taken what they wanted, she moved through her kitchen with quiet practice motions. Kettle on, tea bag in the cup, the soft glow of a lamp spilling over the faded tablecloth. In the living room, a stack of unread novels waited beside her armchair, and a half-finished scarf rested in a basket on the floor. The television was off, the phone lay face down. On nights like this, Marina liked the silence. Or at least she told herself that she did. She poured hot water over the tea bag and watched the steam curl up like ghostly ribbons. The rain drummed harder for a moment, then softened again. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled lazily, not in anger, just in reminder, I'm here. She took her cup and walked to the front window. The street was nearly empty, streetlights casting blurred halos in the wet. Gardens glistened. Cars sat dark and quiet in driveways. There was comfort in the sameness of it. Marina had grown used to the rhythm of evenings alone. She graded a few papers for the community art classes she taught, flipped through a book of watercolor landscapes, made herself simple meals, and went to bed early. No one asked where she was. No one waited up. Some days that felt like freedom. Other days it felt like standing in a room that never echoed back when you spoke. She was halfway through her first sip of tea when the knock came. It was a single sound at first, firm, unexpected. Her hand jerked and a drop of tea splashed onto her wrist. Marina blinked at the door, her heart giving a quick, unreasoned thump. No one came by unannounced. Not anymore. Delivery drivers didn't knock like that. Neighbors texted first. Her family lived hours away. The knock came again, louder this time, over the rain. She set the cup down, smoothed the front of her sweater as if the person on the other side would care, and crossed the room. The hallway seemed longer than usual, stretched by the slight tremor that came from having her quiet disturbed. She unlocked the door, hesitated for half a breath, then pulled it open. A young man stood on her porch. Soaked from head to toe. Water dripped from the brim of his dark hair, tracing lines down his face and neck, gathered at the collar of his jacket. His backpack was slung over one shoulder, unzipped just enough for a rolled-up hoodie to peek out. His sneakers were muddy, his jeans darkened by the downpour. The porch light carved shadows along his jaw, and his eyes tired, familiar lifted to meet hers. Hey, Marina, he said quietly, his voice hoarse at the edges. I'm sorry to just show up like this. For a heartbeat, she could only stare. The rain, the years, the hollow evenings, all of it fell away as recognition snapped into place. Leo? She breathed. Leo Hart? A small, exhausted smile tugged at his lips. Yeah, it's me. The last time she had seen him, he'd been at his mother's backyard barbecue, laughing with friends, talking about some design job he'd landed in the city, the sun catching in his hair. Before that, she had known him as the boy who used to fall asleep on her lap during movie nights, the teenager who'd show up at her old apartment door asking for help with a college essay. He was the son of her closest friend, Lena, the woman who had held Marina's hand through the worst of her divorce. For years, they had been like extended family. Now he stood before her as a man. And there was something hollow and raw in his face that made her chest squeeze. What on earth are you doing out in this weather? She asked, stepping back to let him in before he could answer. Come inside. You're going to freeze. He obeyed without protest, his shoulders sagging as he crossed the threshold. Water dripped onto the hardwood, little dark puddles tracking his steps. The smell of rain and cold air rushed in with him, filling the small entryway. "Sorry about the mess," he muttered, looking down at his shoes. "Leave them there," Marina said quickly. "I'll get some towels and a dry shirt. I think I still have one of your old ones from that summer you stayed here." "That was 10 years ago," he replied with a short, breathless laugh. "I doubt it fits." Marina found herself smiling in spite of the tension she felt humming beneath his words. "Fine, then you'll drown in one of mine. Just don't drip on the rug." She moved into the linen closet by muscle memory, hands reaching for towels, a spare blanket, anything to wrap around this unexpected storm of a person in her hallway. Her mind raced in the odd, fragmented way it did when life took a sharp turn without warning. What happened? Why here? Why now? When she returned, he was standing awkwardly near the coat rack, his arms folded tightly across his chest as if he were holding himself together. She tossed him a towel, and he caught it with ease. "Dry off," she said softly. "I'll start a fire, Marina." His voice stopped her as she turned away. When she looked back, she saw it clearly. The same boy who'd once cried on her shoulder when his dog died, now wrapped in a grown man's frame, eyes carrying years of something he hadn't yet named. "I didn't know where else to go," he admitted, his gaze dropping. "I hope that's still okay." Something inside her that had been asleep for a long time stirred at those words. "Of course it's okay," she replied. "You're always welcome here." She meant it more than he knew. The fireplace had not seen much use that year. But Marina knew exactly which logs burned slowest and how to tilt the screen so the smoke didn't curl back into the room. Within minutes, flames were licking at the kindling, casting a flickering amber hue across the living room. Shadows softened. The house, which had felt so hollow for so long, seemed to breathe in the sudden warmth. Leo sank onto the couch, towel draped around his shoulders like a makeshift cloak. He watched the fire grow, his hands clasped loosely in front of him. Marina brought him a dry long-sleeve shirt and a pair of sweatpants from the spare room. "They might be a little big," she said, "but at least they're not dripping." "Thank you," he murmured, taking them. "Bathroom still in the same place?" "Some things don't change," she replied. She listened to the muffled sound of the bathroom door closing and the rustle of fabric as he changed. In the quiet, the house felt suspended between past and present. Memories hovered in the corners, a teenage Leo sprawled on the floor sketching designs. His mother laughing in the kitchen, Marina herself clinking glasses with Lena. Two women tired but hopeful. The bathroom door opened. Leo stepped out in the borrowed clothes, the soft cotton hanging loose around his frame. He looked younger like that, unarmored, better. She asked, "Much?" He gave her a faint smile. "I forgot how good it feels to be warm." She gestured to the couch. "Sit. I'll make something hot to drink before you faint on my rug." "I wouldn't faint on your rug," he said, voice carrying a hint of his old teasing. "I'd at least aim for the coffee table." "More dramatic." She snorted. "You got more dramatic somehow. Impressive." In the kitchen, she pulled out cocoa powder, milk, and the half-empty jar of sugar she kept for when friends visited, which hadn't been often lately. As the milk warmed, she found herself remembering the last time she'd made hot chocolate for him. He'd been 11, sulking after an argument with his parents, insisting no one understood him. She'd added extra marshmallows, and he'd pretended not to care until she'd seen his shoulders relax. She smiled to herself and reached for the marshmallows out of habit, only to find the bag nearly empty. A handful left at the bottom dot. She brought both mugs to the living room and set them on the coffee table. Leo looked up as she lowered herself into the armchair across from him. "I'm not sure how you take it these days," she said. "But the younger version of you insisted on 3 marshmallows and threatened to sue if there were fewer." A flicker of surprise crossed his features. He reached for the mug, eyes softening. You remember that? He asked. I remember you sneaking extra when you thought I wasn't paying attention. She replied. A quiet laugh escaped him, small but real. Guilty. He took a sip, closed his eyes for a second, and exhaled slowly. The tension in his shoulders loosened by a fraction. They let the silence settle around them, not empty, not uncomfortable. Just there, the fire crackled. Rain tapped gently against the windows like fingers tracing a familiar pattern. The clock in the hallway ticked its steady rhythm, measuring out each moment as if to reassure them they were still in it. Marina set her mug down and leaned forward slightly. All right, she said gently. Talk to me. What happened? He stared into the fire, watching the flames dance. For a moment, she wondered if he would deflect, make a joke, say he was fine. Instead, he inhaled deeply and let the words come. My relationship ended, he said quietly. And then, almost on cue, my job went sideways. It all just piled up. His fingers tightened around the mug. I said some things I shouldn't have. She did too. We both hurt each other more than we meant to. And when it was over, I realized I didn't want to be in that apartment another second. So I left, packed a bag, drove. This was the only place that felt safe. Marina listened without interrupting. She had once believed she knew the shape of heartbreak, the way it carved through you like water through stone. Slowly and then suddenly, her divorce had taught her that you could lose someone in stages until one day the absence began to feel more solid than their presence ever had. Looking at Leo now, she recognized that same quiet devastation, the kind that didn't spill out in tears but sat heavy behind the eyes. I'm sorry, she said softly. That's a lot for one person to carry at once. He shrugged, but the movement was small, defeated. I keep hearing that voice in my head telling me to suck it up or move on, or that other classic things happen for a reason, but none of that helps when the reason just feels like you weren't enough. Her heart tightened. She remembered people telling her similar things after her marriage ended, all of it meant to comfort, none of it landing where it needed to. You're not just things that happen, Leo, she said. And pain doesn't owe anyone a tidy explanation before it shows up. It's messy. It's unfair. It doesn't care how strong you've been so far. He looked at her, something raw flickering across his face. You always had better metaphors than my therapist. That's a concerning compliment, she replied dryly. You should probably get your money back. A real smile broke through then, brief but bright. I missed you, he admitted. You and Mom. You always made chaos feel less sharp. How is Lena? She asked, suddenly realizing she hadn't spoken to her friend in a few weeks. She hasn't mentioned any of this. She doesn't know the full story yet, he said, staring back at the fire. I told her I needed a break from the city, that I was staying with a friend for a bit. I was afraid if I went straight to her, I'd just fall apart and never leave. You always said she wanted to wrap me in bubble wrap. She still does, Marina said with a fond smile. And you chose the friend who doesn't own bubble wrap? Exactly, he replied quietly. You always let me be a little broken without making me feel like something to fix. The sincerity in his tone slipped under her defenses more easily than any joke could have. She hadn't realized how much she missed being needed in that way, not as a wife, not as a colleague, but as a steady presence in someone's life. You did the right thing coming here, she said. You can stay as long as you need. We'll figure out the rest later. His eyes met hers, gratitude shining through the tiredness. Are you sure? He asked. I don't want to be a burden. You seem settled. She let out a small, humorless laugh. That's a poetic way of saying boring. And no, you're not a burden. This house has been far too quiet. It could use a few muddy footprints. He glanced at the little puddles by the door and winced. You're going to regret saying that when you see the hallway. If I survived raising your mother's houseplants for a month, I can survive your shoes, she replied, for a while. They sat like that, two people who had once been woven into each other's days, now finding the threads again. They talked about small things first, how long it had been, who was doing what, the little updates you gave people when you weren't sure how much of the big truths they could hold yet. Then, slowly, the conversation deepened. He asked about her art classes, and she told him about the retired mechanic who painted nothing but boats, the shy teenager who drew galaxies on scrap paper. He asked if she ever got lonely. She paused, then answered honestly. Sometimes, she said, but I've learned how to be alone without being at war with it. There's a difference. You always seemed strong, he murmured. I got good at looking like it, she replied. No one really wants to see the days when you can't hold everything together. They make people uncomfortable. No one ever says that, he muttered. It's always man up or keep it together, like falling apart is some kind of character flaw. She studied his face, the way his jaw tightened when he said it. Then maybe this house can be the one where falling apart is allowed, she said softly. We can take turns if you want. Very democratic. His lips twitched. You first. Nice try, she shot back gently. You're the one who showed up at my door dripping rainwater and existential dread. He laughed, and in that sound there was an echo of the boy she remembered and a new note of something older. Something weathered by hurt and hope mingled together. He relaxed against the couch, stretching his legs out toward the fire. The night unfurled around them. The storm outside eased, then gathered, then eased again. They traded stories about missed birthdays, almost promotions, dead plants, and the strange ache of watching your plans change shape without your permission. Hours slipped by unnoticed. The clock chimed once, twice, 3 times. At some point, Marina made them both fresh cups of tea. At another, she pulled a faded throw blanket from the basket and draped it over the back of the couch within his reach by the time midnight crept in. The fire had dimmed to a bed of glowing embers, and the world outside had quieted to a soft, steady drizzle. Marina stood slowly, muscles protesting the long hours in the armchair. A dull, unfamiliar ache stirred deep in her chest, not painful exactly, but present. A weight she hadn't felt in a long time. It's late, she said, her voice lower, the room's hush settling into her tone. Let me get the guest room ready. Leo sat up straighter, rubbing a hand over his face. Marina, really, I can sleep on the couch. You're not sleeping on the couch, she interrupted. I'm old enough to have back pain just from looking at that thing for too long. I'm not letting you ruin your spine out of politeness. He smiled, defeated in the best way. Okay, guest room it is then. Thought so, she replied in the small room at the end of the hall. She smoothed fresh sheets over the mattress, fluffed a pillow that was slightly lumpier than she remembered, and set a glass of water on the knitstand. Emotions were simple, but something about them tugged at a part of her that had been dormant. She'd done this countless times before for Leo as a teenager, for Lena when she needed a break from everything, for her own ex-husband once upon a time, when being kind had still felt effortless. As she stepped back to look at the room lamplight pooled on the bedspread. Shadows softening the corners, she heard footsteps behind her. Leo leaned against the doorframe, watching her. The towel now folded over one arm. You didn't have to go to all this trouble, he said quietly. It took me 5 minutes and a pillow fight with the bedding, she replied. I've survived worse. He smiled, but his voice was tender when he spoke again. Thank you, really, for opening the door, for everything tonight. I don't know what I would have done if you'd said no. She met his gaze and saw nothing but sincerity there, no performance, no attempt to minimize or dramatize. Just tired honesty I would never have said no, she responded. You know that. For a moment, neither of them moved. She saw him not as the boy with scraped knees and awkward jokes, but as a man standing at the edge of some new, unsteady chapter of his life, looking to her not for rescue, but for a place to breathe. Get some sleep, Leo, she said softly. You're safe here. The rest can wait until morning. He nodded. Good night, Marina. Good night. She returned to her room and closed the door behind her. Leaning against it, she let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding since the knock came. The house seemed different now, fuller, somehow, even though it was the same walls, the same furniture, the same ticking clock. What unsettled her wasn't just his arrival. It was what his presence stirred in her, the realization of how long she had gone without this kind of connection. Without someone moving around in the kitchen, without laughter drifting down the hallway, without another heartbeat sharing her space, she lay awake for a long time listening. At some point, she heard a faint creak from the guest room as he shifted in bed, the sound soft by distance and closed doors. The small noise brought an unexpected smile to her lips. For years she had told herself that solitude was peace. That quiet meant she was finally safe from the chaos of other people's needs. But as the rain whispered against the windows and sleep tugged at her, another thought rose gently within her. Maybe she had mistaken absence for peace. Maybe. This was what change felt like, subtle at first. Like a door opening in a house that had been sealed shut. She did not know it yet. But that rainy night would mark a quiet beginning. Not of some forbidden love story, not of a romance written to shock or defy, but of something deeper and quieter. Two weary people rediscovering what it meant to be known, to heal, to let someone in without losing themselves. Days slipped into a new rhythm. Morning light filtered through the curtains differently with someone else in the house. Marina woke to the soft murmur of running water in the bathroom, the clink of a mug set on the kitchen counter, the faint hum of music from a phone speaker. The cottage that had felt like a museum exhibit, a preserved life. No one visited suddenly lived again. Leo settled into the guest room as if it had been waiting for him. He unpacked his small bag, folded clothes into drawers, stacked a few sketchbooks on the desk by the window. He offered to help with anything that needed fixing, and true to his word, he noticed every little thing that had been quietly breaking. The edge of a cabinet that never quite closed right. The faucet that dripped just enough to be irritating. The mailbox leaning at an angle that made the postman curse under his breath. Leo moved through the house with a kind of gentle focus. Tools in hand, tightening screws, adjusting hinges, cleaning paint-chipped surfaces with patient hands. You don't have to do all this, Marina said one afternoon as he stood on the porch, repainting the railing in slow, careful strokes. I know, he replied, not looking away from his work. But it feels good to fix something that actually stays fixed for a while. She watched him from the doorway, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. The late morning sun lit the side of his face, softening his features. There was a quiet in him, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that came after you had cried everything you could and were. Now, simply breathing through the echo, he hummed under his breath. Some songs she didn't know, and for the first time in a long while, Marina felt the strange warmth of shared space. No pressure to talk, no expectation to entertain. Just two lives overlapping, and return. She did what she knew best. She cooked, not out of obligation, but out of some old instinct that woke up as soon as she heard an extra chair scrape back from the table. She made roasted vegetables and simple pastas, hearty soups on damp days, the kind of meals that wrap themselves around you from the inside out. One weekend, she dug out an old handwritten recipe for the blueberry tart Leo had loved as a child. As the blueberries bubbled in the oven, filling the kitchen with a buttery sweetness that made the air feel thick and warm. Leo wandered in, drawn by the smell. Is that? He stopped in the doorway, eyes widening slightly. No way. You still remember how to make that? I've been known to retain useful information, she said. Like people's dessert weaknesses. He shook his head with a small, incredulous laugh. You really remember everything, don't you? Not everything, she replied. Just the important things. Like the time you tried to microwave aluminum foil. That was an experiment, he said, attempting to look serious. Science. The kitchen ceiling still bears witness to your science, she retorted. They ate the tart worm, forkfuls cutting through the flaky crust as they sat at the table. He closed his eyes at the first bite. I'm not exaggerating when I say this might be the best thing that's happened to me in months. He said, That's depressing, Marina replied. But I'll take the compliment. They fell into easy routines. He swept the porch and carried groceries without being asked. She left an extra mug by the coffee maker in the mornings with his name written on a sticky note as a joke. They watched movies old enough to have visible grain in the film, trading commentary about bad haircuts and questionable dialogue, yet beneath the everyday moments ran a quieter current neither of them named at first, a growing understanding, a shared sense of having found something they hadn't known they were missing. One evening, a storm rolled in with the kind of sudden intensity that turned the sky dark before dinner. Wind rattled the branches outside, and rain came in hard sheets against the windows. Just after they'd finished eating, the lights flickered once, twice, then surrendered completely. The house plunged into darkness. Whoa, Leo said, the sound of his chair scraping back following his surprised exhale. Stay put, Marina called from the drawer where she kept matches. I've done this dance before. Within minutes, she had candles glowing on the coffee table, the kitchen counter, the fireplace mantel. Their flames stamped small halos of light into the dark, turning the living room into a cave of soft gold. The storm outside raged, but in the middle of it all, the little pockets of candlelight felt stubborn and steady. Leo sat on the couch, a flashlight in one hand, though he didn't turn it on. I forgot how quiet everything gets without electricity, he said. You can hear your own thoughts too much. That's why we invited the candles, Marina replied, settling into her armchair. They'll distract the thoughts. He smiled, the gentle glow picking out the curve of his mouth, the faint lines of strain near his eyes. This place... He paused, searching for words. I don't know. It feels like some kind of safe zone, like time slows down when I'm here. Her heart skipped in that small, startled way it did when something simple landed deeper than expected. It's just an old house, she said. Though her voice softened involuntarily, he shook his head. No, it's not. It's you and it. You always made spaces feel calmer, even when everything outside was falling apart. Memories stirred nights spent sitting with Lena at Marina's first tiny apartment. Leo curled up on the couch between them while the adults whispered about bills and illnesses and stubborn husbands. She had made tea then too, lit candles then too. It was strange to realize she had spent much of her life trying to build little pockets of gentleness in the middle of chaos. I just made sure there were snacks, she replied, trying to lighten the moment. He gave her a look. You showed up when you didn't have to, he said. When Mom was in and out of the hospital after her surgery, you slept on our couch for 3 days. You didn't even complain when I hogged the TV. You were 12, she pointed out, and terrible at sharing. Still I am, he said. But you never made me feel like I was in the way. That kind of thing sticks. The quiet between them thickened, not with discomfort, but with weight. The sort of silence that carried meaning in it, like a bowl you had to hold carefully. Marina adjusted the throw over her knees, watching the candle nearest her tremble as the wind pressed against the house. The shadows on the walls seemed to breathe with them. How are you really doing? She asked after a stretch of silence. Not just fine, not getting there. the honest version. He took his time before answering. I feel like someone took my life and shook it like a snow globe, he said eventually. And now everything's still drifting down, and I can't see what it'll look like when it lands. He rubbed the back of his neck, his fingers pressing into the tense muscle there. Sometimes I think I'm okay. I make coffee, I send out applications, I fix a cabinet. And then it'll hit me out of nowhere how much I lost at once. The apartment, the future I thought I was building, the person I thought I was with. And I don't know what to do with that. Marina studied him in the candlelight, feeling the old instinct rise up, the urge to smooth the hair from his forehead, to say something that would seal the cracks. But the years had taught her that most cracks didn't close with words alone. You don't have to know what to do with it, she said. Not yet. Sometimes all you can do is sit in the middle of the mess and remember you're not the mess itself. He huffed a quiet, almost disbelieving laugh. You say that like it's easy? Oh, it's not easy at all, she replied. If it were, no one would need tea or therapy or late-night calls. He glanced at her. Or showing up at your former almost aunt's house. She smiled. Is that my official title now? I mean, what else do you call someone who practically raised you but doesn't share your DNA? He asked, a hint of playfulness returning. She considered this. An unfortunate witness, she suggested. Someone who has seen you wear socks with sandals and has never been allowed to forget it. That was a phase, he protested. Tragically documented in photos, she countered. They laughed, and the sound braided itself through the soft crackle of the candles and the distant rumble of thunder. For a moment, the weight in the room thinned, giving way to something lighter. Later, they moved to sit near the window, watching the storm pour itself out. Marina wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, the fleece brushing her chin as she leaned back. The rain slid down the glass in shimmering trails, turning the outside world into a watercolor painting. You okay? Leo asked quietly, turning his head to look at her. She nodded. Just thinking. Rain has that effect on me. Pulls old memories out like loose photographs. Good ones? He asked. Some, she said. Some not. But tonight, it doesn't feel sad, just reflective. Reflective is better than numb, he said softly. Yes, she agreed. It is. That night, after he retreated to the guest room, Marina found sleep elusive. Thoughts chased themselves in circles. Past hurts, old choices, the strange comfort of having someone in the house again. She told herself it was simply nostalgia, a kind of emotional muscle memory waking up after being unused for too long. Yet beneath that, something else moved, a quiet, unsettled warmth, whenever she thought of the way he'd said this place felt like home. She pushed the feeling aside, reminding herself firmly, he was Lena's son, the boy she'd watched grow up. This was gratitude, nothing more. Admiration, familiar affection, her heart. Stubborn and human, did not always obey the logic her mind laid out so neatly in the days that followed. Their connection deepened in ways that surprised them both. They ran errands. Together grocery trips where they argued over cereal brands. Hardware store visits where Leo lectured her on which drill bits to avoid because the reviews are brutal. On quiet afternoons, Marina worked in her small garden while Leo sanded and repainted the patio chairs, both of them pausing now and then to share small observations about the weather, the neighbors, the birds that had claimed the telephone wires as their personal stage. One afternoon, she caught him standing in the back doorway, watching her as she knelt among the herbs, dirt smudged on her fingers. There was a softness in his expression she didn't quite know what to do with. She wiped her hands on her jeans and smiled, brushing her hair back from her face in a self-conscious gesture. Don't judge me, she said. This Rosemary has seen things. He shook his head. I was just thinking you look happier out there, he said. I don't remember seeing you like that much when I was a kid.